It's the 20-year anniversary of the very special 2004 Boston Red Sox team. What exactly were the vibes like with that team that led to that comeback? Find out on today's Locked On Red Sox.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby Hurlbut, former ESPN social media associate and also currently the host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And want to know the best part? It's free. So you might as well check out the show every day. And my mood really depends on what mood this team puts me in. So if you want to go on this roller coaster ride with me, I am here with you every day on Locked On Red Sox. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Welcome to today's episode of the show, and as I promised with you all, we are doing a series where we remember the 2004 Boston Red Sox. What a time that was. I mean, as Red Sox fans, it was such a fun experience to witness that team, and I have a very special guest with me on today's show who was part of that team, saw those vibes firsthand, and what it was truly like to be part of that experience. Former Red Sox pitcher Lenny DiNardo, how are you doing today?
Doing great. I'm doing great. I just got back from dropping my kids off at school in the morning. I've got a couple different locations with the ages of my kids, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, of course, no problem. And yeah, the whole kids thing, I definitely can relate to being at different schools. I grew up with two younger sisters, and there were many stretches where we were in three different schools. So my parents definitely had a hard time with that.
Yeah, I've got 3 in elementary right now and 1 in preschool. And next year I'll have 1 in middle school and 3 in elementary. So there's no end in sight to driving around.
Just a constant revolving door.
That's I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I'm happy to have you join me today on the show. I know being part of that Red Sox team must have been a really special experience for everybody involved. So the first question that I really wanted to ask you was generally, what kind of are the biggest challenges that you would say with being a successful relief pitcher at the major league level?
Well, for me, I came up in the minor leagues as a starter, and I never had any sort of relief until I got to the big leagues. So there was a lot of on-the-job learning. When you're a starter, your routine's kind of planned out, and everybody has a different routine, but it's pretty set. Like whatever that pitcher wants to do, there's, at this time I'm going to be here doing this, and so on until you walk to the dugout, grab your towel and water, and pitch. But as a reliever, you don't really know when the phone's going to ring. You don't know who the coach is going to really call. You have an idea, but you're not 100% sure. So I had to learn certain things from the veterans on that squad, guys like Mike Timlin, Alan Embry, Keith Falk, among others that kind of showed me the ropes, so to speak. And Mike Timlin, for example, one time the starter was getting knocked out pretty early. You could tell he wasn't going to be long for that game. He was walking guys, giving up hits. And he looked at me and he says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I'm just watching the game, enjoying myself. And he says, "Hey, you kind of know that in this situation, because it's early in the game and your job is to be able to fill innings when the starter does get knocked out as a long relief guy, then that when the phone rings, it's probably going to be you. So you should probably get up, start stretching, start maybe tossing a little bit with the bullpen catcher. And by the time the phone rings, you're already halfway there." And that it dawned on me, like, okay, you have to really kind of know your role, figure out before the coaches know when you should be getting up and getting ready. to go in. And he was absolutely right. The phone rings a couple minutes later. I'm already stretching. I'm already throwing, and kind of knowing that helps. There are a lot of routines you have to follow in the bullpen. Just to kind of be ready. Mike Timlin, again, another great example of this. He did it for so long. He'd have two pieces of gum inside his glove, wrapped up. Glove was in the same spot every day, and at the certain time every day, he would go grab the gum, put it in his mouth, chew it, and just it was very, very routine oriented, just to help you be prepared. But as far as being in the bullpen and following routines and being ready, it was an on the job learning experience for me. And I had a ton of help from those veterans in that club to kind of show me the ropes.
Yeah, I'm sure that definitely was a change in experience, because mentally being a reliever has to be a lot different from starting and just having that impact for a more immediate, condensed amount of time when you're relieving games, as opposed to when you're starting and you have more innings where you can kind of showcase that performance. And if you have a rough inning, it's easier to be able to have the opportunities to bounce back in a later inning. Whereas if you're relieving and you only get 1 or 2 innings to be in that game, that can be tough. So how do relievers kind of, keep their emotions in check if they're coming into a game in a tough situation? Maybe there's base traffic and they're being relied upon to get out of that inning. How do they kind of keep themselves calm to be able to pitch in that situation?
I'd say first and foremost, experience. The more you're out there, the slower the heartbeat, and the more you're going to kind of be able to handle the situation. As far as starters versus relievers, kind of getting past the failure and whatnot, you learn pretty early in this game that it's a game of failure, and you have to think positive. If you start thinking, I'm going to walk this guy, guess what? You're probably going to walk this guy. So you always have to kind of have a positive frame of mind. And there's a reason why starting pitchers in the big leagues are great golfers. Right. And I've relieved, I've started, I did a little bit of everything in my career. But starters, you've got 4 days in between. You get your work done, and there's plenty of time to sit back and relax and kind of flip the switch off. When you're a reliever, you never know when you're going to get in the game. So you have to be able to have that switch handy, and you have to be able to flick it on a moment's notice, going from relaxed and just kind of, monotone into rocket ship mode, right? Where, okay, the phone rings, you're ready, competitive juices are flowing, you have to go out there and compete. You go to the ballpark every day as a reliever, not knowing if you're going to have to flip that switch. As a starter, you kind of know. So, knowing that you're going to fail, right? Being able to bounce back from that. You're only as good as your next outing. You have to have that frame of mind, right? Don't rest on what just happened, whether it's good or bad. If you go out there and strike out the side and you leave the ballpark up here, right? Or if you walk 3 batters in a row, you're down here. You got to be able to have that medium, kind of even keel approach, right? Because the next day you're going to be put in a situation you don't want to be too high or too low, right? So stay positive and know that you're going to have another opportunity to do well again.
Yeah, at least when you're a starter, you kind of know when it's your scheduled next outing. So
Which
you're
it's a double-edged sword, because if you're terrible on Monday, you got
you have to
4
wait.
days in between sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I was terrible, right? At least as a reliever, you can go back-to-back days. If you're terrible, you can go out there and redeem yourself the next day. So it is good and bad. It's different, though.
Yeah, there's definitely pros and cons, I feel like, because as a starter, like you said, if you have a really bad outing, that's tough, that waiting period in between when you're like, I just want to go back out there and redeem myself from this last outing that I had. So there definitely can be pros and cons to both, but that's what makes baseball such a challenging sport to be so successful in.
Yeah. And I teach, pitchers, kids, anywhere from 7 up into college now. And that's the hardest thing for me to kind of pass on. There's 2 things: the competitiveness, being able to flip that switch, because some kids have it, and some kids you really kind of have to work on them lighting that fire under them to really go out there and compete. That, and being able to adjust from failure. A lot of times they'll throw 2 balls in a row and they automatically want to throw their glove. They're showing negative emotion on the mound. You have to teach them, whether you're good or bad on that given day or that given pitch or at bat. Don't show any emotion out there. It's not going to help you at all. So it's part of the game. You have to learn.
Yeah, exactly. And the mental aspect is so important in baseball. And I feel like it isn't always talked about, just how emotionally taxing this game can really be. And it takes a lot of mental focus and just keeping yourself in check on a daily basis, especially because it's a long season. Lots more to come here on this interview with Lenny DiNardo, so stay tuned to find out how exactly the Red Sox actually overcame that 3-0 deficit to the Yankees. Now that baseball season is here, you're going to want to score some nice deals on tickets, and that's where Game Time comes in. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA and MLB, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to game time. There are so many different events that Game Time offers tickets to, and you see the view from your seats so that you can ensure that you're getting the best deals on the best prices. For NBA playoff tickets, I know how expensive those are, but they will ensure that their price is lower than other ticket vendors. So if you want NBA playoff tickets with Game Time, just take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets today. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I've had nothing but good experiences with Game Time, and they'll make sure that you do too. So be sure to check that out today. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On Sports Today will certainly keep you caught up in all things going on in sports, so make sure that you check that out today. We are back here in a conversation with Lenny DiNardo about the 2004 Boston Red Sox team and the vibes. Speaking of, mentally and keeping yourself focused, this Red Sox team this year has experienced a good amount of injuries so far early on in the season, and you spent a good portion of that 2004 season injured. So when you come back from an injury, how do you kind of get yourself to be where you need to be right away to be able to perform? Because I could imagine there's a period maybe where people might be rusty because they haven't been in that routine of pitching to live batters in a while because they've been on the injured list.
Yeah, so there's a progression that the training staff and the coaches put together for everybody that's injured to kind of get them back where they need to be. And a lot of it's just light toss, gradually getting longer, bigger distance in between you and your partner. Then you go to a flat ground, then a bullpen situation, then a batting practice situation where you're facing hitters. And then there's a rehab, 1, 2, 3, however many outings that'll be in the minor leagues. And as far as coming back from injury and fighting the mental aspect of that too, it depends on the injury. If I have a shoulder issue or an elbow issue or something like that, there's this little thing in the back of your mind when you're coming back from injury that's telling you, okay, is this going to be the one that hurts again? Is this going to be the one that gets me back to square one? And you don't want to go through that. You have to kind of get past that mental block and realize that, okay, I'm healthy. I can let it go. I can go out there and compete again. But again, it's a block that you have to get through, that everybody goes through. And once you do, the physical's there, and then the mental kind of follows. But everybody's different. I never really had any super serious. I had a blister. I had a little shoulder fatigue, but I never had any surgeries on my shoulder or anything like that. When I was 30, I had a bone chip and a spur taken out of my elbow, but I was playing catch in 3 weeks. Not a terribly long time on the bench from that.
Yeah, that's good. It's always tough when you see pitchers who have to miss a full season because they need surgery and then they come back and they're not quite the same pitcher that they were prior to that. So that's always tough to watch too, if you watch a really good pitcher and then they kind of lose some of what they had after they've been removed from the game a little bit, then they go through surgery and then they come back.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes if you have Tommy John surgery now, you're going to come back stronger as far as velocity is concerned, because those trainers and the athletic training staff as a whole, what they do is they train you from the feet up, right? You're in the best physical shape that you're going to be in coming back from a surgery like that with a brand new ligament. And while you're recouping from the surgery, you're doing all sorts of lower body workouts, core workouts. You're getting your shoulders in shape, and you typically are in the best shape of your life coming back. So you see oftentimes a lot of these pitchers come back a mile an hour or two faster than when they left the ballpark or the field, I should say.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've always wondered how that works because they do sometimes come back and they look fantastic. And it's like, wow, obviously whatever they went through worked for them because now they look even better than they did. But staying healthy is definitely so important in this game when it is such a long season and there's so many games being played. And it's just tough seeing a team like this year's Red Sox and just how many players have just been put on the injured list and are missing time. It's just definitely tough to experience.
Yeah, this team has been super resilient throughout the season. Every time a player goes down, somebody tends to kind of step into their shoes and really just excel in whatever role that is, especially the pitchers. We've had 3, 4 starters, if you count Giolito, kind of knocked out pretty early in the season, and guys have stepped up. Guys have stepped up, and they're doing a tremendous job. I think Cooper Criswell is a great example. This is a guy that really wasn't, high on anybody's radar at the beginning of the season. And he's gone out there. He's been consistent. He's been giving them a chance to win day in and day out. And you really can't ask for more than what he's given. I think it's a hard decision to make when these guys are starting to return. What you're going to do with him, because he's really filled that role and you really don't want to move a guy that's throwing that well. A guy that's giving you that much strength on the rubber. So, but yeah, where they are right now, what are they, a game above 500 at this point?
Yeah.
With that many injuries? Devers was out of the lineup for an extended period of time. O'Neill was out with that collision for an extended period of time. Trevor Story's been out. He'll be out this whole season. It's just yeah. It's been amazing how well they've been doing with all the injuries, and I think it starts with the pitching. The hitting's been kind of inconsistent, but the pitching's been there throughout the season.
Yeah, and the pitching is definitely something that I think is surprising a lot of people because people did not think the pitching staff would be as good as a collective unit as they have been. And I do feel like bringing Andrew Bailey in as the pitching coach has been a big factor in that. I just really like the approach that he's taking with these pitchers, that individualized approach of honing in on their strengths and having them utilize those in the best ways. And I feel like he's really maximizing these pitchers to be what they really can be and making sure that he's getting the most out of them.
Yeah. There's really no cookie cutter plan for an organization if they're going to excel, right? You look at different pitchers and like you said, what they do right, you want to focus on that. And with all the information and analytics these days, you can kind of say, okay, this certain pitch gets hammered when you throw it in these counts. So we're going to stay away from that. We're going to substitute that with something that you do really well, whether it's a cutter, a sweeper, slider, whatever you want to call it, split finger. So he's great at kind of picking out individually and communicating with the pitchers on what they do well, and then focusing on that. What's the saying? If we judge a frog on its ability to fly, we're going to think, you got to focus on what they do right. If you're a frog, go out there and hop. If you're a cutter guy, use that cutter effectively. Mix in fastballs, four-seam fastballs or whatever, just to keep them honest, or split fingers. But if you do this right, keep doing that, and that'll help you. And as far as the pitchers as a whole, these are big league pitchers. And yes, at the beginning of the season, there was really low expectations, but these guys are in the big leagues. They're in the big leagues for a reason. And if you take each individual pitcher and look at their stuff, most of these guys are 94, 95 mile an hour fastball guys with excellent vertical, horizontal movement. They've all got 3 pitches that are moving glove side and arm side. They have shown the ability in the past to use the fastball up in the zone. So yeah, I mean, they're no slouches, right? They've got the stuff, and now with Bailey and this whole run prevention unit, quote unquote, they're just getting the most out of these pitchers. It's been fun to watch.
It really has, for sure. Yeah. And, you talked a lot about that next man up mentality of people coming in and doing their job to fill in for these injured players who are not playing for stretches of the season. And I feel like that 2004 team was very much like that, too, in terms of we all need to work as a collective unit. And there was a stretch in the middle of that season when you guys were really struggling and things just were seeming to not go right, whether it was injuries or defensive errors and just different things that were causing that team to lose some games in the middle of the season. And then they kind of fell back a little in the standings behind the Yankees. How would you say that you guys as a collective unit got through that stretch of the season?
Yeah. I mean, one thing about Theo Epstein is that when he puts together a club, he puts together a team, he knows not to just use numbers. He's putting together, he's making a soup essentially, right? He's making a soup, and a lot of that's numbers, but a lot of it's personalities, a lot of it's individuals being able to pull the same direction, right? And if you look at the individuals on that team, we've got certain guys that are vocal leaders. You've got Kevin Millar, obviously vocal. Ortiz, Schilling, Wakefield, rest in peace. These are guys that would stand up in the locker room and talk to the team if needed. And you also had, more quiet guys like Billy Miller, guys like Gabe Kapler, guys that kind of showed the younger guys and the team as a whole how to go about your business on the field. And that great mixture, along with very talented pitchers and offensive Ortiz, Ramirez, and all these guys. Along with that, it was a great mixture of individuals pulling on the same rope, trying for one goal, right? And that was to win the World Series. And we knew we had talent early in spring training. We thought that we were good, right? With Terry Francona at the helm those first years as a manager for the Red Sox. He was such a player's manager. It was a perfect storm, really, for a championship. And we kind of knew it. And oftentimes, the best team doesn't necessarily win the World Series. It's the hottest team at the time. And like you said, there was kind of lulls in the season, but we were able to dig ourselves out. And then once we got to the playoffs via the wild card, we got hotter than any team in history of baseball. And that was a recipe for success.
Yeah, it's so true, though. You see these great teams on paper that you look at and say this team should win the World Series. And we've seen this happen with a team like the Dodgers over the last however many years it's been now, where they always seem to be a favorite to go all the way because of, on paper, their roster. And there's so much talent there. But I don't think a lot of people would have expected the Diamondbacks to go to the World Series last year. It really just, you have to be playing the best baseball at that time. And a lot of times that isn't the best team on paper. And that team was so special. And it seemed like it was just genuinely a group of guys that were really just hungry to win. And that's what made it more special.
Yeah, I mean, the goal is to sneak into the playoffs. If you can get into the playoffs, you're giving yourself a shot, right? You don't just go, all right, we're going to win the World Series. Get in the playoffs, get hot, and then you never know what'll happen. I've seen weirder things than teams go out there and just roll off 5 or 6 wins. It can happen.
No, it really can happen. And you felt like you would say you knew all season long that that team had the capability to win the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, we were talented. We were talented. We were a bunch of goofballs. We were a bunch of idiots, quote unquote, right? But we were talented. You look at Ortiz and just the amount of clutch that he had in him, the combination of him and Manny. Again, Billy Miller at the plate. I mean, he was just an outstanding offensive player, third baseman. With the acquisition of Orlando at shortstop and Bellhorn and the pitching staff with Pedro, Wake, Schilling, Bronson. I mean, so much happened in that year that was just iconic, with the fight with A-Rod, with the slap of Bronson Arroyo's glove. Just so many things happened. Fever Pitch movie where they had to go out there and change the ending at the end of the year, right?
One of the best movies ever.
Right. Just so many things kind of happened that made it look like fate, really.
No, it really did. A lot of things that just went right for that Red Sox team at the right time, and that's essentially what baseball is. Coming up, my conversation with Lenny DiNardo continues as we talk more about this year's Red Sox team and the special 2004 Red Sox team and the meaning of teamwork and community. If you're trying to get into sports betting or you're already into it but are looking to make more money, FanDuel absolutely is the place for you. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel is a great place for you to win lots of money, so check that out today. Also, be sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports today, as we as a network have launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. The best part is it's free, so might as well take advantage of it if you're looking to stay caught up in all things going on in sports. Locked On Sports Today absolutely has you covered. Continuing more again with my conversation with Lenny DiNardo about the 2004 Boston Red Sox team and the legendary comeback in the ALCS leading into the World Series. How would you describe those clubhouse vibes when that postseason run started?
I'd say it was no different than during any other game, right? And I think that's the goal. When you're playing a game, you don't want to start changing mentalities, changing heartbeats when you're in a playoff atmosphere. You know, kind of as a team, as an individual, you should realize that this is the same dimensions, it's the same teams you've been playing that you've seen throughout the year, and you want to go out there and play the game and simplify it, right? Try to score first, get the first batter out, don't make mental mistakes, always hustle, make the routine plays, and every now and then pull a great play out. Give your pitcher a chance to go out there and give you 5 or 6 innings. That's the recipe, and you don't want to change the mentality going into a playoff situation. And I feel like the type of team we were back in '04, we were able to have a slow heartbeat when the lights were shining brightest.
Yeah, and obviously Fenway is such a cool atmosphere to play in too, and just such a dedicated fan base who love this team, and they as well were hungry to see a championship because it had been so long since the Boston Red Sox had won a championship, and a lot of those fans had never seen a World Series championship yet. So from that standpoint, what was that like being around that atmosphere and experiencing just how hungry these fans were to see this team win a championship?
Yeah, I mean, Fenway, back then, if you're facing Baltimore back when they were no good, back in the middle of June or July or whatever, it still felt like a playoff atmosphere. The park was always filled. It was always hopping. You could feel just the heartbeat of Fenway Park. When you're sitting in the bullpen, you feel this little bounce and roar. No matter who or what the date was, you always kind of felt like this is a playoff game. And a lot of people don't realize that until they come into town, and they just think, wow. And I went to Oakland after Boston, right?
Yeah.
And I tell people this: I could go out and throw 8 innings and leave the ballpark and nobody would recognize me. But at Fenway Park, I'd throw the fifth inning in a blowout and I'd leave the ballpark and people would know exactly who I am. That's the territory that we're in, right? Whether you win or lose, the fans, they love the game, they love their players. They can be hard at the same time if the team's losing.
Yes, very.
If the team's losing, I feel like fans, they just don't eat dinner that night. They're all upset and they're ticked off, right? They live and die with the team, and that's a good thing and bad thing. You have to take the good with the bad, right? Because when you win and you're on the duck boats, it's all worth it, right? That's one thing I'll never forget, and it's kind of when it really hit me how impressive and important that the win in '04 is when we're on the duck boats and people are holding pictures of family members that are no longer with us, black and white photos that they pulled off the mantle as they ran outside the house. It was special because 86 years, people lived lives without being able to see a World Series win. And tears were streaming down these fans' faces. So it really hit me at that point how impactful and important and special that World Series was.
Yeah, no, it truly was a really special one for so many different people involved. And it's funny because you say the fans can be tough, and that's especially even more noticeable now with social media because people will rip players apart on social media if they are not performing now. And that's something that, mentally for players, they have to kind of block that part out and just continue to do their thing because this fan base definitely can be very hard on those players.
Yeah, I'm so glad there was no such thing as Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or anything back in when I was playing early on, at least. And it could be brutal. And sometimes people will get behind a keyboard and say something because of what's going on in their day, not necessarily because of what the Red Sox are doing. And that's just part of it. So it's the smartest thing you can do as a player is kind of stay off social media. And I know that's difficult and probably not encouraged. I think everybody wants to have social media and to get
Right.
their thoughts and feelings and whatever they have out. It's great, but don't read the good or the bad because you can start believing it either way, and you don't want to do that.
No, absolutely not. You don't want to throw off what you've been doing in your routine because you're seeing some negative comments on social media. And at the end of the day, these guys are doing it. They made it to that level and they're playing, and that obviously means they are very, very good baseball players.
Yeah, most of the negativity that I see on social media is from somebody that maybe didn't get past T-ball. And
Yeah.
it's kind of funny if you think about it, like, oh, you're a bum, you can't do this. Like, well, give me 3 pitches with you in the batter's box, and I think he might say something different,
Exactly. Part of that season, we already talked about that stretch in the middle that was very hard for this Red Sox team. Then they came back, get into the playoffs, and this team's motoring. They're ready to go. And then they run into that Yankees team. And then things seem to be very, very depressing for the Red Sox and the fan base and people just starting to feel like this Red Sox team was cooked at that point because they, were facing a situation that no team had ever done before. And they're looking at themselves down 3-0 against a Yankees team that obviously back then was such a heated rivalry, and beating the Yankees was something that everybody wanted so badly. And especially, in that part of the season in the ALCS. During that series, after they lost game 3, everybody kind of had this mentality of, well, what do we do now? This team can't come back and win this series. So is there a specific moment that you can remember, something that was said in the locker room or something that triggered this team to keep a positive mindset and say, we're going to go out and win this series?
I feel like, whether it's, Johnny Damon doing naked pull-ups or Gabe Kapler and Millard debating each other about God knows what, just we didn't let the pressure show on our faces. Yeah, there was pressure, and I think it was Millard to Shaughnessy basically, don't let us win tonight, right? We never thought we were out of it, although some people might have, fans and media might have thought we were out of it, but we never kind of had that, well, that's it, right? And
Yeah.
it was such a storybook ending to the season. I mean, the whole season was kind of a movie, and what better to be down by 3 games and then us just go off and rattle 8 in a row. And nobody really thought about St. Louis after we won those 4 against the Yankees, right? Because nobody was going to beat us at that point. We were just talk about hot. We were the hottest team in sports, not just baseball. Nobody ever got hotter than that. And it all started from small moments. The Dave Roberts steal. Clutch Ortiz, clutch Damon, clutch pitching, Schilling, the bloody sock, things like that. Guys stepping up, Derek Lowe coming in and just bring a workhorse for us. Didn't know he's going to make the playoff roster early on, and then going out there and doing extremely well. Embry, Falk, all these guys stood up and did their job effectively. And if we're thinking about the games that we lost, we're not going to go out there and be able to go out there and win any of the future games, right? And it goes back to having a short memory, trusting in yourself, doing the little things right. I feel like we did that extremely well when it really counted.
Yeah, and you really do have to take it game by game. I mean, that run showed that. because it's easy for somebody to go down 3-0 and say, this is going to be very, very difficult to do, but it's about keeping yourself focused and saying, we're still in this. The series isn't over. They haven't won 4 games yet, so.
Yeah, I mean, again, baseball, you learn pretty early on, or you should learn pretty early on that, you've got to be in the moment. If you're thinking 2 or 3 batters later and you're focusing on those pitches, you're not going to be in the moment now in this batter. And that's when you walk a guy, you give up a key double.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is game by game, but it's more pitch by pitch, being there, being present, pitch by pitch, whether you're a pitcher, a defender, knowing that, okay, this ball is going to be hit to me. And if it's not, okay, get back to it. The next pitch, you have the same mentality. This ball is going to be hit to me, so you're ready. If you're an offensive play, if you're a batter, right, don't swing outside the strike zone. One pitch, one zone, depending on the count. Knowing that I have a job to do if there's a runner on second base, I'm trying to pull it to right or drive it to right if I'm a righty. Playing the game the right way, doing the little things correctly. That's what winning ball clubs do. Not focusing too much on what I have to do 3 innings from now, but just being in the moment, being effective then.
Yeah, there's just so many special moments to look back on from that season. That was just such a special group of players, and it really set the tone for Boston Red Sox baseball moving forward because they've won 3 other championships since then. So it's just been a fun time now to be a Boston Red Sox fan after all those years of people waiting to see their favorite team win a championship. Now it's like, okay, we'll give you a few more. After that too, and this team since then has been very fun overall as a team to watch since that 2004 season.
Yeah, we just had our reunion at Fenway Park for opening day, and I will say that in true 2004 Red Sox fashion, that before we all walked out on the field, we all poured shots of Jack Daniels in this little room. The whole team took a shot, and then we walked out to the wall, and then we all walked out together. So 20 years later,
so cool.
we were all keeping it loose and light and having a great time.
Yeah, no, that's so cool, and everybody seemed so close on that team. It was truly like a family, and I feel like that's what you want from a team. And you and that team know adversity, know how to overcome adversity. So thinking back to that experience, what advice would you give this year's team when they go through tough stretches in the season? A lot of people are injured, for example, like we talked about, or they're just not winning games and they seem to have everything going wrong for them in that time, because teams go through those kinds of stretches.
Yeah, I'd say despite what everybody says on the outside, try to keep the clubhouse, right? Try to keep it tight knit. Believe in yourselves. You're a big league ball player for a reason. And if you let the outside noise come in, you're going to start to have doubts on why you're there. I think the biggest goal is to realize that, okay, you're in the big leagues because you're a great ball player. You can go out there and rattle off a ton of wins. But if you let that noise get in, you're toast, right? So let your skill set kind of propel you into each W, and it kind of goes back to the pitching staff. A lot of these guys in the media and the fans said, "Oh, these pitchers are not any good." But if you look at what they have in their back pocket when they're throwing strikes, they're really talented ball players. There's no reason why they can't go out there and continue to have success. So again, the clubhouse is important. Realize that clubhouse atmosphere and camaraderie is something that can really help you because it's a long season. You see them more than your family oftentimes. So, right, keep that atmosphere in the clubhouse special, and that will help.
Yeah, no, I definitely am looking forward to seeing what this team can do for the rest of the season, because they've already definitely surprised some people, especially from a pitching standpoint. So I'm excited to see what they can do moving forward, especially as they're starting to get healthy again. Now they have, their pitchers mostly back. Brian Bayo coming back was huge, and that kind of changes the overall outlook of the starting rotation. Pavetta's back too, and it's going to be good to see as this team gets their guys back what they can do moving forward with this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to believe that the pitching's been this good if you look at the stats, with most of the pitchers kind of on the shelf for the majority of the season. So you hope that they continue to do that, and if they improve it, that's special, right? Because the talent's there. Pavetta, Bayo, these guys are special pitchers, and hopefully they can go out there and continue to be successful and consistent. And if they do that, they're going to win, right? I mean, offense is going to, but the nature of offense, it's going to be up, it's going to be down, it's not going to be as consistent as the pitcher should be. You hope to get 5 or 6 innings from your starter every time out, right? If you can do that, you're giving yourself a chance to win. But if the offense can kind of get on the same page and be a little bit more consistent, I feel like this team can go on a decent run. And in the toughest division in baseball, they're kind of hanging out in the middle right now throughout the whole season. And if they go on a run and a couple of those teams at the top, falter a little bit, you'll be in the mix, and hopefully at some point at the end of the season, maybe be able to contend for the wild card.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I love about baseball. You really don't know. A team at the top could start to lose games and struggle, and the Red Sox could, like you said, get hot when they need to get hot, and anything can happen, really. So I'm definitely encouraging people to stay open-minded about this team, because they could be surprised in a good way if they do exactly that.
Yeah. Overall, the team, I love the way they're playing baseball. The defense has gotten better. I love the speed on the base paths and how aggressive they are taking the next bag. Anytime you do that, it puts the pitcher kind of on their heels, and it makes them pitch differently. When they're thinking about the guy on first or second, they're not necessarily focusing on that next pitch. So it makes the offense better as well. It's been a fun team to watch this season. They're an underdog, and I love an underdog story, going out there and having success. And there's going to be ups and downs throughout the season. And hopefully at the end, they end hotter, on the hotter side of things rather than the colder side, because the past couple seasons, 78 wins just isn't getting it done.
No.
I don't think this is going to be a 92 win season for them, but if it's 85, 86, I think that's totally feasible for this club. And they're going to be in the mix if so.
Yeah, I had predicted 83 wins before the season started for this team. So we'll see. Hopefully they get more than that. That would be awesome. But I definitely am keeping an optimistic mindset about this team. There's definitely a lot of talent here. Everything just needs to come together, and then they can compete for sure. And I think, how they play against their own division is going to be telling too about where they actually are. But Lenny, this was such a pleasure having you on the show. I really do appreciate you taking the time and reminiscing on some really fun times in your career.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's hard to believe it's been 20 years. But
I know.
Every time I look in the mirror, it looks more like 30. So I've gone gray. But this is fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And everybody, like I always say at the end of every show, keep the faith and go Red Sox. And I will catch you next time.